At some point, a strange event had happened to all of us, and that on many occasions caused a feeling of fear, and that also seemed to have no explanation. We look for a logical reason that justifies the facts that are unusual. Well, without neglecting the possibility that there is a spiritual plane about which we know but very little, and that the beings belonging to it are present in our reality, then I will present a series of explanations that scientists have made now for these events considered paranormal that very surely you or a friend, family member, or acquaintance have experienced. There are testimonies of people who on more than one occasion claim to have seen some kind of presence with the peripheral vision of their eyes, and that when they look in that direction, said presence disappears completely. Surely you recognize the sensation. In 1998, two researchers worked to explain the same sensation that employees of a laboratory had. In doing so, they realized that a fan was making the air vibrate with a frequency of 18.88 beats per second. Coincidentally, this is about the same frequency that our eyeballs resonate with. This means that at that frequency, the slight pulsation of air transferred to our eyes is greatly amplified, deforming this tissue and activating the light receptors in our retinas. You may be wondering how they proved that this theory was real. It turns out that when the fan was turned off, no one has these visions again. Now, I bet you've heard or even witnessed the glass move on a Ouija board at the time of a summoning, and everyone claims that it's impossible for that to happen unless a spirit moves the object. But if the spirits could move glasses, they wouldn't need everyone to have their hands on them, right? The cause of the glass, or whatever object, moving on the Ouija board is a well-studied phenomenon called the ideomotor effect. It's a psychological process that makes a person make involuntary movements, letting themselves go in such a way that they don't notice that they themselves are intervening in the movement. This explanation becomes clear in the National Geographic Brain Games program. In one chapter, they did an experiment to see if a group of volunteers were communicating with the dead or if they themselves were unconsciously producing the ghostly message. During a first Ouija session, the participants asked a spirit on a board several questions, and the entity guided them perfectly through the letters to show them its message. After this first test, the presenter asked the participant to blindfold themselves to perform a second Ouija session, and coincidentally the spirit was no longer able to hit the letters and its mission becomes absurd. Have you ever felt observed, and when trying to corroborate if this is the case, you realize that you are totally alone? Don't worry, it's not an entity. This phenomenon could be the result of infrasound, vibrations with frequencies lower than those audible to the human ear, but which we can still perceive. Human beings only hear sound waves between 20 and 20,000 Hz, but we can still feel the vibrations. Infrasound occurs for various reasons: storms, wind, weather, and the like. Even your kitchen fridge can emit them. The feeling of fear depends on the circumstances. If you are alone at night and you have this feeling, it's possible that you panic more than anything else. Perhaps many have only experienced this type of event that for a moment causes great fear, but that in reality doesn't go beyond a scare. However, some people have witnessed paranormal activity in an even more intense degree, that by themselves certain objects fall, move or fly away, hear a knock on the door, or any type of violent event that can be perceived, but it is impossible to identify that produces it. This type of event is known as a poltergeist phenomenon, which generally includes inexplicable noises, movements of inanimate objects, materialization, disappearance of food, strange smells, and even physical attacks. But what reasonable explanation can exist for this event? Well, the more recent theories about the phenomenon say that it is nothing more than an uncontrolled epilepsy of the temporal lobe due to anxiety, only that instead of acting in the organism it acts outwards. It is considered that it may be due to a modification of the electromagnetic field that acts on nearby objects. Curiously, it usually affects elements that have a metallic component, such as porcelain or mechanisms of a blind. Well, what do you think of these explanations? Do you find them convincing, or do you still believe that there are really supernatural presences lurking around us? There is still no scientific theory that can completely deny the existence of paranormal events, but perhaps this is an advance for understanding.